So, all right, let's do it. Back to round out our let's call it 3 to 5 part series on some of the military propositions that Matt's brought forward. And we're going to go ahead and get all these published, posted on the Knight Brothers Commentary YouTube channel.
And then I'll just put them on the website once we do that.
Yeah, we'll get them on the website. We'll get all of our notes and things on there for your review. With that, Matt, I'm going to crack open my sparkling water and let you kind of dive into what we're going to talk about today.
All right, so today what we're going to talk about is essentially just kind of improving on military recruitment today.
Okay.
So I would say probably the first thing that I really want to kind of bring up is basically expanding upon the warrant officer ranks. Because did we talk about this the last time?
Let's say we did. I was going to say, let's recap what we talked about last week, because we did talk about the warrant officer.
Yeah.
We talked about really some of the changes that you were sort of theorizing about to incentivize individuals to look to the military as a career.
Yes.
Eliminating some of the bureaucracy, if you will, and requirements to where somebody might be able to enter at, I believe it was like a level 3 or level 4, with rather than having to work all the way up from the bottom.
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, that's true. But, so for those who don't know, a warrant officer is essentially a specialist with many years of experience in any given field inside the military, though most of them are probably going to be like aviation or technical. Whereas a commissioned officer, which is kind of like your lieutenants, your captains, majors, ensigns for the Navy and Coast Guard, those are going to be more like a typical manager in an office setting.
Okay.
So what I'm proposing is that we modify the warrant officer ranks to become more of the senior specialist ranks that the Army had back in the early 50s to like mid 80s. Where essentially they could still serve in the military, but don't necessarily have any leadership responsibilities.
Okay.
So for someone like me who doesn't have any military service, and I want to join as a warrant officer, I would have to have either an associate's degree and at least 5 years of experience in the civilian workforce,
right,
or 3 years if the MOS is like critically in demand.
And that is, when you say that, those requirements that you're giving, is that how it currently is, or is that what you were proposing?
This is what I'm proposing, not necessarily how it currently is, because currently now, the only two ranks that you could like enter in are either the enlisted ranks or the commissioned officer ranks.
Okay.
You can't necessarily enter in automatically as a warrant officer.
Yep.
So, kind of building off of that. I mean, if someone had a bachelor's degree like me, they would have to have at least 3 years of experience in the civilian workforce or no prior civilian experience for in-demand MOSs.
Okay.
But kind of moving on to other requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, I would say pretty much all warrant officers have to have U.S. citizenship, like commissioned officers. I would say, unless I'm mistaken, and it very well could be, I would say the scores for the ASVAB depend on each individual branch, but I think the average is like 110.
All right, you're going to have to explain what that is.
Yeah, essentially the ASVAB is basically the test that everyone takes when they join the military.
Okay.
So basically it's just kind of like, it's like a military version of the SAT or ACT, if you will.
I was thinking like the Wonderlic for NFL players.
Well, that's true. I mean, it could be like that too. It's essentially designed to see like where your strengths and weaknesses are. Okay. So that way you can it helps determine which MOSs you're eligible for.
Can somebody in our audience go out and take a practice one today?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
what kind of questions are on it? I'm just curious.
There's like English, writing, proofreading, science stuff, aviation, mechanical.
Okay. So it's pretty in depth.
Yeah, it's pretty in depth. Yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. Yeah. But so that's kind of how it is for both the for both commissioned and officers, you have to have at least like 110.
Okay.
But I'm also adding at least a 900 combined verbal and mathematics score on the SAT,
Okay.
or just an overall 39 on the ACT.
Okay.
And to be fair, I mean there are some MOSs that do require security clearance, regardless of whatever rank you're in. So that has to be there.
Has to be taken into consideration.
I mean that does have to be taken into consideration. Leadership programs are not really necessary for joining as a warrant officer now. Yeah. I think the Army does require that, in addition to maybe the Navy has two different things going on. They got like warrant officers and limited duty officers, which are, I wouldn't say exact, but they are kind of similar in function.
Okay.
To be honest, I didn't really do a whole lot of research on limited duty officers, so I'll admit my knowledge there is pretty weak.
Yeah.
So if any of you viewers are formerly in the Navy or currently in the Navy and have any experience with limited duty officers, please let us know in the comments. We would like to know. But another requirement that you have to have for being a warrant officer is you have to be no older than 46.
Okay.
Or 32 for aviation-based MOSs. So, but kind of going back to what we were building off last week.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you're prior enlisted and you want to become a warrant officer, essentially you have to be at least an E4, which is what I was talking about.
I call it level 4 at the beginning.
Yeah.
E4. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially you have to be at least an E4 with at least 10 months time and grade. And a skill that is closely associated with any warrant officer MOS or rating.
Okay.
And one thing that I think that the Air Force absolutely needs to do, but they probably won't, is reinstating the warrant officer ranks, because they are literally the only branch in the military that doesn't have them.
Okay. What was the reasoning behind that? Do we know?
To be honest, I actually... again, I didn't really do a whole lot of research on that. My focus was really just trying to understand
the process.
Yeah, the process, and
that's fine. I'm just curious why they differ from the other branches.
I mean, to be honest, the Air Force is already the most technical branch.
Yeah.
So maybe they just didn't really see the need for it.
Okay.
But personally, I think that's just kind of stupid.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I mean...
You're going to get some of that personal input on this podcast. So.
Yeah, you're definitely going to get it here.
We're not perfect, so anyways.
Yeah. I mean, because to me, it does not make any sense as to why you would not want to have more specialists in the most technical branch of the military. I mean, it makes no sense to me.
If you're in the Air Force and you're in charge of making these decisions, let us know why it's not stupid.
Yeah. So, yeah. Please let us know in the comments. So, did we talk about enlisting at a higher rank last week? Because I don't remember.
I think we did. We talked about enlisting at like an E4 based on experience outside of the military.
Yeah, so, I mean, to be fair, I mean, I'd say most branches do have programs where they allow people to enlist at a higher rank.
Yeah.
So, I'd say if you completed at least 2 years of a ROTC program in college, but you kind of flunk out or something, you can enlist at an E2.
Okay.
Or if you complete, or let's say if you decide to enlist for at least 6 years, you could be at least an E3, which is what the Air Force does. And like E4, if you have like a college degree, or if you score perfect, if you have a perfect score in your ASVAB, or if you refer at least 3 people that have at least a high school degree and score at least a 50 on the AFQT, which essentially is the overall ASVAB score.
Okay.
You basically get to enlist at E4.
Yep.
Which is something that the military branches kind of do, but I just decided to expand on it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And kind of expanding on this again, but now for the officer rank. So essentially, let's say someone has a master's degree and they decide they want to join the military, get a little bit more experience. So essentially, if they have a master's degree, they can commission at O2, which is essentially like a first lieutenant in the Army, or is it lieutenant junior grade in the Navy? Oh, good lord.
Too many grades.
There's too many names in the ranks.
Right.
Or, let's say if you're like a former CFO or CEO of a company for at least 2 years, you can potentially commission at E3.
Okay.
Or O4 for at least 5 years of experience. But I would say probably the one thing that I think the military probably should expand on, just based on my research, is actually giving priority to prior enlisted members.
Okay.
To go through the commissioning process.
Yep. Makes sense to me.
Because I mean they already have more experience in the military, along with
And that's cross branch. Somebody who had military experience in the Army could go then apply for an O4 in the Air Force.
Yes, essentially. But you could also just apply within your own branch as well. I would say most people just apply within their own branch.
That's what I figured. That's why I was asking, because I was just curious.
So but at the end of the day, I just feel like it's important for the military to kind of expand its potential recruitment base.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, when you really kind of sit down and think about it, I mean, the one thing that the military is really going to have a struggle with is just recruiting people.
There's no doubt about it. They already did, as we talked about last episode. Last year, it was the first time in how many years that they hadn't fulfilled their...
Well, I wouldn't say it's the first time in many years.
Okay.
But I would say it was definitely the first time since Trump was elected that they really couldn't fulfill their quotas.
Okay.
But now...
So in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so it's been in the last couple of years that they couldn't really fulfill their quotas. So now, kind of moving on to the contracts. To me, I just felt like... I don't know. For me, I just felt like there was not a whole lot of like clarity, or maybe like when it comes to the research that I found with regards to contracts, or just maybe not, or maybe just doesn't have like a whole lot of options or uniformity to them.
Okay.
So I would say I decided to divide military contracts into two subtypes: MOS assignments and duration of service.
Okay.
So essentially, for MOS assignments, there's basically the first option is a guaranteed rate, or MOS. So, like, let's say if you want to be an 11 Bravo, which is your infantryman. I mean, if you want to be 11 Bravo, you work with your recruiters to make sure that you get that specifically in your contract.
Yeah.
Or, let's say if you want to get, like, a guaranteed field. So, essentially, if you want to be, like, an 11 Bravo, but you're not necessarily really picky, or just depending on the needs of each branch, you could either be an 11 Bravo or 11 Charlie, which is a indirect fire infantryman from what I remember.
Okay.
If anyone was in the Army and if I made a mistake, please correct me in the comments. I apologize for any mistakes. And the third option is essentially an open contract, which is essentially the military can give any recruit any job based on their ASVAB score and the needs of the branch.
Okay.
Now, the second subtype is basically duration of service. I would say most contracts are probably going to be around 4 to 6 years.
Okay.
With, I think, maybe, I would say a lot of commissioned officers end up serving at least 5 years, as well as the Marine Corps. I could be totally wrong about that too. So, by all means, please correct us if we make a mistake. So essentially, I just listed like a whole bunch. So, like, you can serve at least 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. So, again, like, just kind of goes all the way up to 8 years.
Yep.
And I actually decided to do something that was a little different. Where basically, let's say you want just to serve only 2 years active duty, you can do that.
Go.
But you also have to serve at least 6 years in either the reserves or National Guard.
Okay.
So there's no IR, which is essentially the inactive reserves.
Okay.
Or individual ready reserve, as it's more commonly called.
Real.
So for those who don't know, the individual ready reserve is essentially a reserve, is essentially like reserves, but you don't necessarily show up to any units.
Okay.
Basically, it just says, hey, like if you separate from the military, you can still be called back into service in case there's a war or if we need you.
Yeah.
But I decided to actually kind of expand the IRR a little bit more and actually give more opportunities for people to like have service in other areas of the government while not actually having to serve in the IRR.
Mm-hmm.
So examples could be the Peace Corps, the AmeriCorps, transitioning into the National Guard, or reserves if you're active duty, or vice versa if you're already in
the reserve.
Yeah. The Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection, Civil Air Patrol, the Public Health Service Commission Corps, essentially. I mean, basically just, or even the state militias, if you will, if you want to go that route.
Okay. Militias, you don't hear a lot about that anymore.
That's true, really. I mean, the state militias are, I guess you could say, I mean, this might be a really potent term, but irrelevant.
Yeah.
I mean, because essentially, I mean, you could argue the National Guard really kind of serves that purpose too, in addition to serving the federal government.
Yeah, well, the militia, I mean, as it was originally written, was intended to check a federal government if they were becoming oppressive, essentially. You know,
and that's probably why. I mean, a lot of states still have like their own separate units in addition to the National Guard.
I think the challenge there is that technology's outpaced anything that the militia would be able to really.
Well, not necessarily true, because I mean, a lot of state militias do have some similar training to the National Guard or even active duty military, but it's probably not going to be at the same level as.
I just mean in terms of you know, firepower and jets and technology.
It's like, because the state governments are not necessarily going to spend as much money as the federal government does. Because all those things just cost money.
Yeah.
Because I would say waivers are definitely going to be one of the bigger things when it comes to expanding the recruitment pool that the military has.
Okay.
So I would say an example of a good waiver would be obesity.
Yeah.
And before anyone just lashes out in the comments, which they are probably fair to do so, I just want to point out that at the end of the day, I mean, the military just can't ignore people who are obese because they're just, I mean, because they're in poor physical condition. So what I think they should do is they should grant a waiver to someone who is obese, but just enroll them into the DEP program or at least a pre-boot camp service where they're required to work out at least twice a week with their military recruiter.
I think, you know, a better way to say that, Matt, because you know, this is not I don't think, I know who you are and how you're coming at. This is not a discriminatory thing.
Yeah.
It's really, rather than calling it necessarily obesity, it's just physical readiness.
Yeah.
Are you physically ready? Whether you're obese or not obese, there's a certain level of physical readiness that's required to be in the military.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what ends up happening is that you're going to put other people's lives at stake.
Just depending on you nonetheless, too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that it could. So everybody should have a certain level, and we've already talked about some of the physical testing and things that you have to be at in order to be a part of the group.
Yeah. So another thing that I think the military should do, and I think the Air Force was... the Air Force did something about like 2 years ago where they kind of, they had a new methylcholine challenge test where if someone with asthma could pass the test, they were allowed to serve in the military. Okay. I think the military should expand on that.
Yeah.
But don't give anyone with asthma like a combat role. Like, because I mean, I see no reason why someone with asthma can't serve the military in a way that, I mean, that doesn't require combat service. You know?
Well, it's the same thing with the physical readiness.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
There's something for everybody. It's putting the right people in the right spot.
Yeah, absolutely. So another example of a good waiver that I would like is tattoos. The military has probably gotten a little bit better, especially the Air Force, because I actually have the picture here. Yeah, this is essentially their little tattoo policy that they passed like 2 years ago.
What does that say? Restricted area, hands, and neck, head.
Yeah.
Everywhere else is open.
Yeah. Because to me, I mean, like, if you have a tattoo that's covered by your uniform, no one's gonna see it.
No.
So it's like, who cares?
Right.
Like, why would you limit someone just based on what tattoos they have? Unless it's like really offensive or something, you know, those kinds of things I get, but like, if you're not gonna see it, who cares?
Right.
Tattoos have. To me personally, tattoos are in no way a honest reflection of one's character.
No.
And probably the big
good or bad.
Yeah, good or bad. I mean, take yourself. I mean, because you have a nice little tattoo there, and I would never consider you to be a criminal in any way, shape, or form.
No.
So, and I would say probably the last one that I really kind of want to discuss is, at least with regards to good waivers, is marijuana use.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, a lot of people in this country, especially in our generation, have smoked weed occasionally.
Yeah.
I know I haven't, and I don't think you have either, but maybe you haven't, I don't know. But
it doesn't matter. There are people doing it.
Yeah.
Aside from the law.
Yeah.
People are doing it.
Yeah.
And there needs to be an avenue to just have it be what it is.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of studies and things out there that would argue that it's a healthier alternative to something like alcohol or opioids or things that, you know, that we know are destructive to people's lives.
You also have to take into account that with so many states now legalizing marijuana, I mean, you just wonder if the military is going to be I'm not sure if discriminatory is the right word, but I don't know, just limit opportunities just based off that. I mean, it almost seems like an archaic notion, if you will.
It is.
So to me, I just feel like the military kind of just needs to let that go.
We could do it.
So kind of getting on the flip side of that.
Yeah.
I mean, for examples of bad waivers would be someone with bipolar disorder, which is please correct me if I'm wrong, someone who has a potentially uncontrollable range of emotions. Yeah. Or am I?
No, bipolar is basically.
Or is that manic depressive?
No, well, listen.
I always get the two confused.
Bipolar is kind of two different.
Yeah.
It's polarity. So you're at opposite ends of the spectrum. Really heightened and really, depressed or low. Or however you want to put it.
Yes, which to me just screams awful in the military, because at the end of the day, I mean, you do have to have a certain level of emotional stability.
Well, it's just like you have to have physical and emotional readiness.
Yeah.
And truthfully, that goes for any job. It doesn't matter if it's in the military or not. You need to be physically and emotionally ready for the tasks that are at hand.
Yeah.
It's pretty common sense. You got to take care of yourself first before you can give to other people.
And probably the last thing that I really kind of want to discuss is, I would say the military really kind of needs to focus more on training services, in my opinion.
Okay.
So example of training services would be career-specific programs in the military, kind of like Ranger School or RASP if you want to become an airborne ranger. Or maybe even ROTC scholarships for qualified students who can't afford to attend college.
Okay.
Or even just the post 9/11 GI Bill,
9/11? Are we going to do a podcast about 9/11?
Oh, God, Brad. As much as I agree with you on that, I don't think we're ready for that.
No, I'm joking. We're not going to.
Yeah. And I don't know. I'm just going to add one last thing. And I know I'm going to get hate for this, but to me, I just do not understand why the military needs so many uniforms. I mean, I understand if you want to have the camis and the PT uniforms, those things make sense, but to me, I just don't care for the dress uniforms. I just don't.
Okay.
For me,
so you're saying there's some cost savings there.
Yeah. I mean, because now the Army is actually looking at reintroducing the pink and green, the pink and green dress uniforms from World War II.
Oh, wow.
Which to me just sounds like a whole bunch of...
Well, that's just
because, I mean, the Air Force spent at least $200 million just trying to get rid of the ABU uniforms to replace them with the Army OCPs.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, it just doesn't make any sense why you would want to waste millions of dollars on uniforms when you could literally just use that money to repair bases that got destroyed in hurricanes
or reinvest in your people offering training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, to me, it just seems like a waste of money.
Fair enough. And that's why we're here. We're sharing our thoughts and our opinions. So
please let us know in the comments what you think.
Yep, that wraps up our 3 to 5 part series on the military. Let us know what you think, and we'll catch you next time.
All right.
We're out.